They want to bankrupt him, slander, defame, sabotage, and destroy him. They will do whatever it takes to get Trump. But the American people, what's left of us anyway, have your back, Mr. Trump. The show starts now. Nearly $500 million. That's how much former President Trump is on the hook for in his New York BS civil fraud case. If he can't come up with it, he could see his bank accounts frozen and his New York properties seized. The real fraud in all of this is the wicked and crooked witch of New York, AG Letitia Get Trump James, whose only goal as a public servant to the people of New York is to get Trump. She wants Trump Towers, she wants it all, but she's not alone. All of it is such BS, and they're all in on it. The Democrats, the media, the DOJ, the prosecutors, the DAs, the judges, and yes, even a handful of slimy-ass fake Republicans, all of them in cahoots. They're all reading off the same sheet of music. Truth, decency, and moral standards be damned. They are all not only conspiring against Donald Trump, but against the tens of millions of Americans who support him. As much as they bitch and moan about Putin and Russia, what they're doing to Trump is right out of the communist authoritarian playbook. All of this, mind you, as Biden's illegal aliens are exacting the true bloodbath on our country, literally and economically, and they do it all with a straight face. Despicable. Joining me now with his take is Fox News Business senior correspondent Charles Gasparino. Charles, it's great to have you. I appreciate your reporting. I appreciate your tweets, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So you appreciate my tweets. Not a lot of people do that, but anyway.
I do. You know what? Actually, yesterday you tweeted something. You tweeted this out suggesting that Trump's billionaire friends are unwilling to help him out. You know, I wondered the same thing. He's got to have some friends in some high places that have a little bit of loyalty, a little bit of decency, but they don't seem to want to come and help him out at all. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, as of now, they don't. I mean, this could change. I mean, we're coming up to the deadline. Trump also, I think what's interesting about this is, I mean, they're playing with a lot of different scenarios here. And one scenario that, you know, we reported yesterday on Fox News on Neil Cavuto's Your World, and I reported on Fox Business on Liz Claman's show, was that Trump might just turn around and say, okay, Tish James, you think you're so smart? Here are my properties. Take them. Start figuring them out. Start figuring out all the different limited partnerships that are embedded in this, because he has partners, and then just try to figure out which is mine and which is someone else's, because she can't see somebody else's piece of, say, Trump Tower or the Doral or Mar-a-Lago. She can only figure out his piece, and it could take. Trust me, if you covered real estate, I've covered it. I mean, if you ever looked at it like a lease on these properties, I mean, it gets really confusing. It's hard to figure out. It could be a really daunting task for her to unwind all this stuff.
Yeah, it feels like he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. He gets a loan from a billionaire friend, then all of a sudden, oh, look, Trump has his billionaire friends bailing him out. He's an elitist. Look at these billionaires. They probably don't want to touch him because they don't want to have any taint from that on them. Or he goes to the Saudis, as you put in your tweet. Oh, well, then he's taking money from the Saudis, 9/11. He's a domestic terrorist. I mean, no matter what he does here, they're going to say something horrible about him. They've put him in this position. I think you're right, though. I think what he should say is, you know what? Take it. We'll wait for the appeal, all this stuff, but just take it and figure it out, and you do what you want with it. And then I think that that's also going to ring some really alarming bells for other people in New York, other business people in New York, other people involved in real estate in New York, because who wants to be in that environment when things can so arbitrarily be taken from somebody, especially somebody who really helped to build what is modern day New York. So, you know, all of this is so sad. I'm wondering what your thought is as far as Donald Trump moving forward with his campaign when they seemingly want to bankrupt him at every turn. You got the E. Jean Carroll farce. You've got this. You've got more indictments he's still got to work through. I mean, can he get out of this?
You know, if anybody has the intestinal fortitude to do it, and I was going to use another word that my father would use. My father was a Marine Scout sniper. I won't use it. This is a family show. You know, yeah, he does. He's got what's of steel. Okay, so he does have the again, I'm trying not to say it, to basically go toe to toe with all these guys and play a long game. That's because that's Donald Trump's been doing it for years. By the way, he's been doing it with New York banks, you name it. I mean, I've covered this guy forever. I know him very well. Yeah, I know pretty well where he would complain to people about me and say how much he liked me, even though I write nasty stuff about him, because I've always given him a fair shake. And one of the things I've given him a fair shake on, and I've reported a lot about this, is just how damning the precedent is of going after him on all this stuff. And, every major business person in New York is watching what Tish James is doing and saying, why do I want to subject myself to the chief legal officer of New York State, the New York Attorney General, who's got tremendous powers over businesses domiciled here? There's something called the Martin Act. It's a very sweeping law that the New York Attorney General has. It became popularized by Eliot Spitzer back in the early 2000s. I covered this. No one knew about this Martin Act thing. It's a law, a business law, which says, they can basically indict you for, a parking ticket. The bar for intent is very low. People were complaining about Spitzer doing this years ago. And, he was kind of a, junkyard dog. We don't want to get to this. But Tish James has taken it even further. And I can tell you that there are business people saying, why do we want to subject ourselves to this? Because the New York State, the public officials who run various offices in New York State, Spitzer was, at times, insane, but he wasn't a far left progressive, near communist. Some of the people that are in key offices here in New York State right now they're near socialists, and they don't care what they do to businesses. And, Tish James seems to be in that category. So, guaranteed, guys that run big banks, the Jamie Dimons, they're all looking at this and said, maybe we should domicile in. And now it's not that easy to go to Florida. Trust me on this. Pick up and leave. But I'm telling you, I know this conversation's going on. And when Trump is faced with, if you know his business background, again, I covered it. I covered his junk bond problems. I've covered it. I remember when I first started covering Wall Street when I was a kid, and you might not have been born yet, back in 1991. Okay. I remember covering the Trump junk bonds. And, we used to I would report about how he was playing this long game with the banks. They put him on a short leash. They basically said, you can't spend more than X or Y. They didn't foreclose on him because if you foreclose on him, it's worth that you would rather have him running the stuff, his properties and casinos and their stuff he was doing than foreclose on it. Then you have to run it. But he played a long game with them and extracted really good deals out of all of them. He's used to playing a long game. My guess is he's going back to the playbook of the 1990s right now, how he dealt with the banks to try to deal with all these law enforcement people. Obviously, banks are not as powerful as law enforcement people. Some of these people could put you in jail, like Fonnie Willis or Jack Smith. Although the Fonnie Willis case seems to be evaporating in a love triangle or whatever it was that went on down there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. But I think things are really different from the 90s, because in the 90s, you didn't have one political party that was trying to exact their revenge against a candidate for president. I mean, things used to run, whether they were fair or whether they were this or that. It came down to business, but it didn't come down to just out to get one man who you really don't want back in the White House. But, Trump is fighting back on, at least on another ground, when it comes to, many of the ways that they're attacking him, suing ABC News and George Stephanopoulos, the little guy from ABC, yes, for defamation, for saying this about him, claiming that he has been held liable for rape. I want to play the clip for those who haven't seen it.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a
civil court.
It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment.
So, Charlie, all of that with the E. Jean Carroll stuff I thought was despicable anyway. But when you've got George Stephanopoulos sitting there talking about Trump being held liable for rape, I mean, it seems like he's got a pretty decent case there, broadcasting that to the world at large. How do you think this is going to shake out?
that said, the bar for defamation on a public figure, particularly Trump, who's the most public figure probably in the world right now, is really high. And, he could say, well, I conflated rape with sexual assault or something like that. And he can probably skirt this. The real question is, though, is the sort of listen, I kind of like George Stephanopoulos. I've known him for years. But let's unpack this a little bit. George Stephanopoulos worked with Bill Clinton.
Yeah, no kidding.
Bill Clinton was accused of rape by Juanita Broderick. He faced, I'm not saying he committed it, I'm just saying he was accused. There's a degree of hypocrisy here, and that, there should have been some degree of self-awareness with George and his producer on this, turning the screws on a Nancy Mace, who, by the way, is a survivor of sexual assault, is sort of unbecoming of any journalist, and then not disclosing your background. I mean, what he should have done in this and said, listen, I work for a man who was accused of rape. Okay. How do you feel about supporting a candidate who's been accused in a civil proceeding of sexual assault, or even if he said rape at that point? That would have been a way into it that covered him. But the fact that he didn't disclose his own, listen, have you seen the movie that made him famous about how him and Carville were plotting to disparage women who were like making claims against Bill Clinton? It was pretty rough stuff. And poor Nancy Mace is sitting there saying, and by the way, on top of that, I don't want to be judge, jury, and executioner here, but no offense to, but if you read some of the stuff that E. Jean Carroll said, that somehow out of nowhere, this guy that's eminently recognizable back in the 1990s, which he was, pops into Bergdorf Goodman and sexually assaults her. I mean, I'm not like I said, it might have happened, but it does strain credulity a little bit. The Bill Clinton stuff, though, man, there was a lot of evidence there on his philandering and everything else. So
probably a lot more that we'll never see
George
as well. Well, George also
he handled that so poorly.
He also failed to disclose back in 2015 and 2016 that he donated to the Clinton Foundation. But, you might like him. I don't like him. I think that he's a snake. And I think that he often, and not only is completely hypocritical, but just slimy in the worst way possible. But, we're talking about a lot of New York stuff. I know that you're invested in it. I know you tweeted about it. And I'm really confused about all of this. I know that squatting is a big problem, not only in New York. It's been a big problem in Georgia. It's a big problem in California. But now we've got this homeowner who's been arrested. You pretty much have to beg to be arrested in these blue states, by the way, but arrested in New York after a standoff with squatters, costing her money. I mean, what the heck is going on in New York? And why does it seem only the good people, only the decent people are the ones that get the book thrown at them in that state?
Right. Daniel Penny basically is arrested for manslaughter because he chose to defend himself, not with a gun, by the way, with his hands. I mean, he's a formidable guy, but he didn't shoot this guy. Listen, here's what I would say about these prosecutors that are in New York right now. And this is where I put a lot of blame on the business community. The business community is up in arms right now because the streets of Manhattan and throughout the city where a lot of their workers live are unsafe. People get thrown in front of trains. People get shot on trains that work on Wall Street and work in the financial sector. Yet none of these big fat cats, when Alvin Bragg, who's a socialist, defunded police prosecutor who took over in an office that was one of the most stellar reputational offices ever, the office of the Manhattan DA, it really is disgusting. And the city is devolving into chaos. I mean, listen, I was born in the Bronx. I grew up in Westchester, but New York has always been my home. My cousins grew up in the Bronx. I'm a New Yorker. I've never seen it this bad. And I was here during the 70s, and that was like, remember the movie Escape from New York? Right. The 70s and early 80s were pretty rough. I've never seen it like this. And this is all about the sick political environment in New York. And it gets back to who's running New York politics right now. And it's some of the most far left people ever. And they are chasing businesses and people out, that people that have money are leaving. I mean, here's the thing, and the Wall Street Journal made this point, but it's something I've been saying for a while. The Wall Street Journal editorial page, we are swapping millionaires who are moving to Florida for migrants.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about that.
Actively importing poverty and crime and an impending bloodbath is what it's going to be. Again, I don't know why anybody, I understand people born and raised, I just don't understand why any of you are in New York. 1211 is a beautiful building. I love Fox News. I love coming in from Nashville for 1 or 2 days and then getting the heck out. But I appreciate all of you guys that hold down the fort there and bring us all the news out of New York and remind the rest of us why we live in red states. Charlie, thank you so much for your tweets, which I find very colorful. And thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
I can't wait to one day make my way to Nashville.
You will love it. You will never go back. I promise you that. Thanks so much, Charles.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, folks, the left is now suddenly pro Second Amendment. Oh, wait, not for you and I, American citizens, but apparently for illegal aliens. Oh, yeah, it's time for final thoughts. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution states that American citizens have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. Of course, Democrats and leftists have an aversion to many of our rights and to the Constitution itself, but apparently their infringement efforts only apply to American citizens, given this. Obama-appointed District Court Judge Sharon Coleman of the Northern District of Illinois took it upon herself to drop gun charges against an illegal alien, arguing he has the right to possess firearms. In her ruling, she stated that the illegal in question maintained his Second Amendment right to bear arms given the non-violent circumstances of his arrest and arguing he poses no risk to public safety. Not only is this ruling completely and totally ludicrous, it also violates Title 18 of the U.S. Criminal Code, which prohibits illegal aliens from possessing firearms or ammunition. But folks, there you have it. All it took for the left to be pro-gun is to add illegal aliens into the mix. Illegal aliens have no right to be here. They broke immigration law entering this country. They have no right to be in. So, like hell, should they be afforded any constitutional rights, let alone the right to keep and bear arms. You think Biden's open border bloodbath is bad now? Well, wait till these slimy Democrats start allowing the millions who entered illegally the right to arm up. The world is emptying its prisons into our backyard, and leftist judges believe they should be afforded the Second Amendment rights and privileges they fight tooth and nail to strip from American citizens. So gird your loins. Those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless and take care.